She explains that it is statistically possible, but Nade dismisses the idea while refusing to bring statistics into the discussion. He then questions whether, according to statistics, there is a probability that she also likes him. Without hesitation, she states that the chances are absolutely zero. Hearing this, Nade collapses to the ground in exaggerated disappointment, while prompting her to urge him to be more realistic. Iruki then addresses the professor while pointing out that if their boy cannot handle the overflow, it does not mean he will actually die. However, she believes that, at the very least, Iruki should understand the seriousness of the situation, given his past experience. He, in turn, argues that they should trust their boy while considering his level, and accuses the professor of becoming overly concerned. Her increasing involvement even makes him view her as obsessive. At that moment, their boy stands up while asserting that the decision should be his own. He admits that he is scared, and has felt as though he is on the verge of losing his mind, yet at the same time, the sensation brings him a strange sense of satisfaction. The professor is shocked by his confession. He continues while explaining that what is happening to him feels incredibly special. Although he fears the nightmares, he is determined to uncover the secrets hidden within himself. Resolving to face it as a challenge, he chooses to overcome the situation rather than surrender to it. Watching him, Professor Oliver sees him as no different from the other boys who have come before her. She recalls the boy who once tried to save her in the past. With that memory in mind, she becomes completely accepting of his decision and agrees that there is no need to expel him from the club. Nade, upon hearing this, is overjoyed. However, the professor then announces that they will proceed with Plan A while requiring them to deliver results within 1 month. Nade, shocked by this revelation, feels an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. Their boy then asks whether they are expected to give a presentation within the given time frame, and whether they can reference any old records. Iruki, however, informs him that the club has never conducted a presentation before. If they had, then paranormal science would already be a subject of study in their classes, as there is no definitive way to prove the existence of the soul. Nade, while feeling utterly disappointed, finds himself helpless in the moment. Trying to change the mood, Iruki directs Nade's attention to a pretty girl. Their boy immediately reminds him to stay focused, but Nade becomes fixated on her. Curiously, he asks whether she is a senior or a graduate. It is only then that their boy realizes the woman in question is actually Professor Oliver, while looking entirely different than usual. Iruki takes note of his keen ability to judge women. Curious about her unusual appearance, he wonders where she is headed. Iruki speculates that she is probably going on a date. Nade, surprised, sees this as his opportunity. He decides to follow her while hoping to learn something about her that he can later use against her to prevent the club from being shut down. Their boy finds the idea ridiculous, but Iruki warns that tailing a level 6 mage is far from a good plan. Nade, while growing irritated, watches as Iruki dashes off, declaring that he will follow her while Shirone is tasked with bringing Nade along. Determined, Nade insists on bringing his cloak for disguise while instructing Iruki to keep his distance, as they see this as their only chance to save the club. Meanwhile, their boy cannot believe how passionate they are about everything and not about studying, but about keeping the club intact. As Professor Oliver stands ahead, Nade quickly realizes that they have already been caught multiple times. Their boy, filled with unease, questions their motives, yet his curiosity grows as he wonders who the professor is meeting. Finding it strange, he cannot help but ask himself why she is heading toward the commoner area. As she enters the market area, the boys begin to speculate whether she is selling something on the black market. However, instead of heading toward any vendors, she moves toward a nearby house. Knocking on the door, she greets a man while prompting Nade to wonder if he is her boyfriend. Their boy, while sensing that they have seen enough, suggests that it is time to leave since she has already gone inside. However, Nade insists that they need more information and decides they must go in. Without hesitation, he rushes toward the house, determined to do whatever it takes to protect their club, while leaving their boy shocked by his recklessness. Waiting outside the house, they eventually break the basement lock and manage to sneak in. Finding the first floor empty, they cautiously make their way to the second. To avoid detection, he decides to use Schism to scan the hall area. Their boy, while observing their skills, wonders if they would be just as passionate about learning if they focused on studying instead of reckless schemes. Suddenly, Nade signals them to stop while claiming to hear a voice coming from one of the rooms. Their boy urges him to leave while they still can, but Nade refuses while arguing that since the professor started this battle, they must see it through to save the club. As they listen closely, they hear a conversation from the room. Someone is commenting on how they look and discussing whether they should change their clothes. Their boy believes this is the perfect moment to leave. Then, a girl inside asks when the man's wife will be returning, to which he replies that she will be back in 2 hours. Nade immediately realizes that Professor Oliver's supposed boyfriend is actually married. Iruki believes they now have enough information to blackmail her. But Nade, after a brief hesitation, decides against it while realizing that it would be wrong. Before they can plan their next move, they accidentally burst into the room, throwing open the door and shouting that the professor should not be doing something illegal. However, instead of finding a scandalous scene, they see Professor Oliver sitting calmly while the man sketches her. Professor Oliver, visibly unimpressed, demands to know what they are doing there. Now sitting on the floor with trembling hands, they apologize profusely. Nade, still flustered, accuses her of having an affair, which only makes her more annoyed. She questions whether they truly believe she would do something like that. Then she sternly tells them to wait until they return to school. Iruki, while accepting the inevitable punishment, quickly blames Nade for everything. However, Nade retaliates while arguing that Iruki had followed him in all of it. Iruki further points out that the invisibility cloak belongs to him. The man, amused by their panic, suggests that they might have only come because they were worried about their professor. Though she remains displeased, he reassures her while suggesting that they might have thought sneaking in was acceptable since she was present. He then offers to get them some tea. Grateful for the unexpected kindness, the boys silently thank him, seeing him as an angel who has saved them. Meanwhile, their boy finds himself growing uneasy. As he observes the man, a strange sensation overtakes him while making his head feel heavy. He wonders whether this is supersight at work. Professor Oliver, now more at ease, seems comforted by Armin's understanding nature. Curious, their boy asks who the man is and why she is being so secretive about him. She explains that they met as students in a magic school when they were young. Iruki then asks whether he is a mage and what happened to his eyes. She solemnly reveals that he lost his sight because of her. Remembering her past, she recalls a time when she experienced overflow as a child. Caught in a torrential downpour, she had been overwhelmed and trapped in a nightmarish state while running blindly through a flooded area. The water was deep, and she had been recklessly jumping through it, unaware of the danger. During that moment of panic, he had appeared while carrying a piece of wood. He had told her to hold on to it until they reached the downstream area. As they moved forward, she had hesitated while saying she couldn't do it. However, he had insisted that she hold her breath, believing it was their only chance to survive. Although he had managed to lower her safely into the water, he had been struck by debris, which were large pieces of logs crashing into him. He had once been a brilliant student, full of promise. However, losing his sight to save her had cost him his future as a mage while forcing him to abandon his dreams. She explains that she recently discovered he had become an artist, which had completely surprised her. Iruki then asks if this is the reason she has been so concerned about the overflow. At that moment, Armin enters the room while carrying tea in his hands. The boys quickly thank him as he sets it down. He remarks that Professor Oliver must have scolded them, but he knows she cares deeply for her students. As they sip their iced tea, Nade, while feeling somewhat guilty, admits that they also respect the professor. Their boy, still fascinated by Armin, asks if he can watch him while he paints. The other boys, equally intrigued, lean in to observe. Iruki, curious about Armin's abilities, questions how he manages to paint despite being unable to see. Armin, unfazed by the question, simply suggests that they begin and asks if the professor is comfortable with it. Sitting on the bed, she allows him to sketch her while the boys watch in amazement. Iruki, closely observing him, suspects that he is using his spirit zone. Nade also recognizes him as a zoner, further confirming their suspicions. Feeling a bit uneasy, their boy eventually apologizes for asking whether Armin can truly see. Instead of being offended, Armin smiles and admits that he had been waiting for someone to say that. He then acknowledges Shirone for noticing it first. With a calm gesture, he reaches up and removes the cloth covering his eyes. Armin almost doubts our boy would notice, but then he reveals his eyes while leaving him stunned. Nade and Iruki also react with shock while realizing that Armin's eyes hold something unusual. They struggle to believe it, but Armin calmly explains that it is a magic called pause. Our guy, overwhelmed by disbelief, recognizes that a time mage capable of reaching the speed of light is right before him. Armin gestures for Shirone to sit while assuring him that there is no rush since time is on their side. Admitting his own nervousness, Armin reveals that he has sensed Shirone's awareness for a while. Normally, people perceive light as visual information, but his own eyes directly see light itself. Because of that, he immediately recognizes their shared experience. Our hero, still confused, asks for clarification, and Armin confirms his suspicion whether it is the immortal function. Curious, our boy inquires about this mysterious ability. Armin describes it as a door leading to infinity, accessible only to those known as unlockers. Once opened, the mind of an unlocker quickly expands into the infinite, while bringing both power and a sense of freedom. However, he reassures Shirone that as long as he does not push beyond his limits, his mind will remain intact. With some hesitation, our guy shares a personal struggle while admitting that he dreams of the universe every night. Although he has not mentioned it to his friends, he worries that the constant supersight might drive him crazy. Armin listens and then remarks that magic seems to have embraced Shirone. He explains that such indications are completely natural, as stepping into infinity exposes one to the vastness of the universe itself. Those who encounter limitless space often feel an overwhelming fear, but that fear can also lead to enlightenment. Most unlockers gain an omnipotent control over space while allowing them to wield magic on an immense scale. However, Armin suspects that Shirone's fear does not stem from infinite space alone, but he has encountered something entirely different. When the time is right, an understanding of it will come naturally, though it may take days, years, or even a lifetime. Hearing this, our boy reacts with shock, but Armin reassures him. The knowledge he seeks is already within him, he simply has yet to name it. Trying to make sense of everything, our guy reflects on a strange string of light he once saw in his dreams. Armin considers the possibility that it might be connected to gauge symmetry, while suggesting that the answer our boy searches for lies somewhere within that mystery. Our boy feels shocked when he hears the term gauge symmetry. Armin explains that scholars once believed the world to be flawless while following precise laws of physics, fixed numbers, and an unchanging speed of light. To them, this perfect balance seemed like the work of an intentional force. However, as research progressed, they discovered that this symmetry had actually been broken. Shirone recalls something Iruki mentioned about the microscopic world, where everything follows probabilities rather than certainty. Armin agrees and adds that the universe is not as perfect as once thought. The reason behind this broken balance remains a mystery, an unknown force without a name. However, he expresses confidence that Shirone will eventually uncover the truth. Feeling encouraged, our boy thanks Armin and admits that until now, he had only followed Professor Oliver's path. However, after meeting Armin has made him feel truly inspired. In response, Armin asks for a favor that he wants Shirone to look after Sienna, as she is more sensitive than she appears. Our boy, curious about Armin's secrecy, questions why he hides the fact that he still uses magic. He suggests that honesty would be easier. Armin explains that Sienna constantly worries about him while carrying guilt over something that happened in the past. Since nothing can restore what he lost, he does not want her to feel obligated to him. He also mentions that she believes he has moved on and even started a new life. His only wish is for her to live freely without unnecessary burdens. With that, he makes our boy promise to keep his secret. Afterward, he thanks Sienna for everything. She reassures him that no thanks are needed and reminds him to write once he settles elsewhere. Armin agrees and encourages the others to keep studying. They all express their gratitude before he turns to Sienna one last time to say goodbye. She nods in response and then leaves. A girl suddenly arrives and cheerfully tells Armin that she has finished shopping. She then asks if he has completed his painting. Noticing Professor Oliver, she expresses surprise that Sienna is already leaving and suggests that she stay for dinner. Standing beside Armin, she appears comfortable. While Shirone silently observes the interaction, he finds himself surprised while realizing that Armin is more romantic than he had expected. The girl then turns to Sienna and notices her flushed face. With a playful tone, she mentions that Sienna looks unwell and points it out to Armin. Soon after, the group leaves together, with Armin bidding farewell. As they walk away, the girl makes a remark about how no one would believe that someone like Armin, known for his bright eyes, could ever look so stunned. Armin, while seeming unamused, tells her to stop teasing and focus on her report. Switching to a serious topic, she reminds him that they need to leave Kreus and reach Kelvora within 15 days. She warns that they will likely face some trouble along the way, but expresses confidence that he can handle it. Playfully, she even calls him Reflector of Eternity. Armin, however, remains stern and assures her that he will fulfill his contract, while asking her not to waste time with unnecessary comments. She then questions whether he has told Sienna the truth while reminding him that the lives of those he cares about are at risk. He reassures her that Sienna remains unaware of everything. Meanwhile, on the other side, Nade suddenly expresses concern while saying they are in trouble. When the professor asks for clarification, Nade explains that if things continue as they are, Professor Oliver's already bad mood might worsen. He worries that they will face punishment for informing a professor and breaking into a restricted area, which could even lead to their club being dissolved. Trying to lighten the situation, Nade asks if they can eat before heading back. Iruki eagerly agrees while saying he is starving. The professor, after considering it, agrees that it is not often they go out and decides they should get something to eat before returning. With a slightly sarcastic tone, she comments on how they must be hungry after making a mess all day. Encouraged by her response, she then tells them to eat as much as they like. Feeling hopeful, Nade wonders if they might be able to escape punishment by improving the professor's mood. Iruki, on the other hand, is already planning to order something expensive. Meanwhile, our boy quietly reflects on the situation while suspecting that the professor is upset about Armin leaving. Wanting to lift her spirits, he resolves to find a way to cheer her up. 2 hours earlier, as they eat, the professor suddenly starts drinking while catching everyone's attention. The students question her decision, to which she casually responds by asking why it is a problem. She points out that if they can break into people's houses, then she should be allowed to have a drink. Nade, eager to stay on her good side, quickly encourages her while saying that today is her day to drink as much as she wants. Iruki, amused, comments that it seems like she has never heard such reasoning before. Wanting to earn some favor, Nade offers to pour her a drink, but she reminds him that he is too young to even be touching alcohol. Meanwhile, Nade silently thinks that he needs to get on her good side, though he has no solid plan. Our boy then hands Iruki a drink while suggesting he try it, but Iruki declines while saying he is already tired of it. Determined, he adds that he will find the professor's weakness that night. An hour later, the professor is completely drunk. She grabs Nade's cheeks and affectionately calls him a troublemaker while commenting on how soft his face is. The other two observe her and immediately realize that she is fully intoxicated. Suddenly she points at them and praises their impressive results in the speed gun test. She acknowledges their talent, but questions why they slack off in their schoolwork. With a serious tone, she reminds them that many people have talent, but still fail to achieve their dreams. She insists that she only wants the best for them, even if they think she is a bad teacher. They immediately deny having such thoughts. But before the conversation continues, they collapse onto the table, exhausted. Seeing her unresponsive, they grow concerned. Iruki notices that they have finished eating and remarks that she is not getting back up. Unsure of what to do, they realize that they have not even paid for the meal. They repeatedly call her name, but she remains motionless. At that moment, a man approaches and while seeing the professor's condition, comments that she is completely drunk. Offering to help, he suggests taking her home in his carriage, but only her, as he laughs to himself. Shirone immediately refuses, but the man dismisses him while insisting that they should leave it to an adult. Admiring her appearance, he attempts to wake her up while remarking that she is quite pretty. Seeing this, our boy becomes furious and grabs the man's hand in anger. The man, taken aback, warns our guy to reconsider his actions. However, our boy firmly tells him not to touch their professor. The man, now offended, shouts at him while calling him a rascal and saying that students should not be out so late. He then threatens to have them expelled while boasting that it would be easy for him. Without hesitation, Nade attacks him while presenting two choices that either he leaves or embarrasses himself right there. The bystanders, shocked by what they witness, recognize it as magic and whisper among themselves while wondering if the students are from Alphea's School of Magic. Iruki then retrieves the man's wallet while reading his name aloud, which was Douglas Silver from the Crayus Administrative Office. Douglas, stunned, demands to know how Iruki got his wallet. Without answering, Iruki mockingly calls him a civil officer and then tosses the wallet aside. Finally, he tells the man that if he truly wants to get them expelled, he should speak with Iruki Mercadine, who would be willing to listen. With that, he throws the wallet back at Douglas while hitting him directly in the face. The man looks confused upon hearing the name Mercadine. He hesitantly repeats it while realizing that the family is a first-class noble house, responsible for overseeing Dragon Bolt and serving as the king's advisors for 3 generations. Upon this realization, he and his companions panic and quickly flee. Iruki watches them run and sarcastically questions why they even bothered confronting them if they were just going to escape. Meanwhile, Nade turns to him and asks why he suddenly mentioned his noble background, while reminding him that he usually avoids talking about it. Iruki casually responds that he makes an exception for people who try to use their influence in such an underhanded way. Shrugging it off, he suggests they leave while saying that the incident has completely ruined their meal. Before heading out, Nade takes a picture of Professor Oliver in her drunken state, while joking that Professor Perfection passed out drunk would make for a great headline. Iruki glances at the photo and nods in approval while suggesting that it might help them save their club from being shut down. Meanwhile, our boy struggles to carry the unconscious professor and complains to the others about having to do it alone. Nade playfully asks what the problem is, while Iruki reminds him that he is the strongest among them. However, our guy, exhausted, loses his balance and collapses to the ground. Seeing this, Iruki suggests that he try using his schema. Confused, Shirone asks how he is supposed to activate it so suddenly. Iruki reassures him that if he can create a spirit zone, he should also be able to use his schema. Nade adds that their kingdom has mage knights as well, and he is certain that Shirone has the talent for it. Excited by the idea, our boy expresses his eagerness to learn. Iruki instructs him to close his eyes and focus inward while following his voice. Shirone agrees while listening carefully as Iruki tells him to sense himself and dive deeper into his consciousness. Iruki asks if he can still hear him and instructs him to take deep, slow breaths. Our boy follows along and confirms that he is listening. Satisfied, Iruki then mischievously asks where his first kiss with Amy took place. Nade bursts out laughing and remarks that the two are complete opposites. Realizing he has been tricked, our boy gets frustrated, while the others find the situation amusing. Soon after, they continue on their way back. After some time, Shirone suddenly suggests that they should stop using blackmail. Surprised, Nate asks why while reminding him of how much effort they put into getting the photo. Shirone reasons that the professor must have had a difficult and emotional day. Iruki agrees, while realizing that she only wanted to protect them from experiencing the same pain she had gone through. After thinking it over, Nate also agrees, though he expresses concern about the club's future. Since the club was passed down to him by its founder, he feels responsible for keeping it alive. However, after a moment of hesitation, he decides that they will figure something out on their own. Determined, they all agree to solve their problems without relying on blackmail. Just then, Shirone excitedly shouts to do it. To their shock, the professor suddenly wakes up and asks about what they were doing. They freeze in surprise as our boy nervously asks if she is sober. She sighs and apologizes while admitting that she owes them one. She assures them that she will not report their actions to the school and that they will not face any punishment. The three of them stare at her in disbelief. As if that wasn't enough, she then announces that she will give them an extra month to prove their club's worth. She challenges them to find a ghost, or any convincing evidence to justify the club's existence. If they truly care about it, they must convince the school why it deserves to remain. Encouraged by her words, Nade eagerly accepts the deal. Determined to prove their club's importance, Iruki, though less enthusiastic, acknowledges that they will have to use their brains for once. Nade, full of excitement, calls them rascals and tells them to get ready for a challenge. Our boy, relieved but curious, asks how long the professor has been awake. Smirking, she replies that a little alcohol isn't enough to cloud the mind of a mage. The three students exchange confused looks while realizing they have been fooled once again. Several days later, at the magic school, students gather in confusion. They stare at a large announcement board displaying details about a mysterious club presentation. Some question when Shirone became a member, while others are surprised to see Iruki involved. However, what shocks them the most is the name of the club, which is the Paranormal Science Club. Murmurs spread as they read the title of the presentation, which is the Paranormal Science Club, the terrifying truth about Althea's School of Magic. The school's long-kept secret will soon be revealed. A group of students notices the club's name and questions whether it is truly an academic club after recognizing two members, Shirone and Iruki. About 10 days earlier, at Istus, Nade struggles to come up with ideas while expressing frustration. Iruki reminds him that they have spent the entire night brainstorming yet still lack a solid topic. Nade, while feeling hopeless, believes that even if past events actually occurred while recreating them for the presentation, would be impossible. 3 days after making a deal with Professor Oliver, our guy feels relieved that they have a chance to present and keep the club active. However, the subject of paranormal science raises concerns. Nade wonders how they can present something invisible, and the thought begins to overwhelm him. He regrets discarding a certain photograph. Iruki, unfazed, remarks that others have always considered him strange, but he no longer wants to continue. Meanwhile, our boy recalls an incident where Nade sees a shadow and falls in fear. Nade, while considering a trick, wonders if they could make others believe it is a ghost. Shirone initially reacts in fright, though only for a brief moment. Iruki doubts that the trick will deceive mages, but Nade points out that Shirone was fooled, even if only for seconds. Suddenly Shirone realizes they don't need to prove anything. Nade, while sensing a breakthrough, suggests seeking guidance from Professor Oliver again. Iruki, however, believes the professor already has an idea. Our dude then explains that fear arises from within, rather than from external proof. Iruki understands the shift in perspective that they should make the audience believe first, then provide proof, instead of the other way around. Nade compares it to a psychological game. Shirone, recognizing the importance of this approach, expresses gratitude for saving the club, but jokingly comments that Nade has gone days without showering. Iruki praises the innovative thinking, but remains concerned that their magic trick is too unimpressive, even for believers. He suggests making it appear creepier. Nade confidently assures them that he can improve it using a continuous lightning shadow effect. With that, he prepares to demonstrate his skill. Iruki watches Nade's demonstration and comments that if he uses the technique continuously for 24 hours in a second, it will resemble a smoothly moving image. Meanwhile, Nade, exhausted from 3 days without sleep, struggles to stay focused. Our boy, concerned, advises him not to push himself too far. Iruki then wonders if they can create something similar using a machine. Nade admits he had considered that idea earlier but points out a major issue. He explains that while a moving hologram can be generated by running a program through a machine, it would appear fake if it does not respond to the person in front of it. Recalling his own experience of seeing a ghost, he emphasizes that a lack of reaction would make the illusion unconvincing. Our guy reflects on his own encounter and realizes that making eye contact with the ghost had been the key factor in his fear. Iruki, suddenly having an idea, claims he knows how to solve the problem. When the others ask for details, he explains that they can predict people's reactions in advance. Curious, they ask how such predictions could be made. He suggests using complex systems theory while analyzing numerous behavior patterns and incorporating them into a program. Giving an example, he describes how Shirone might instinctively look over his right shoulder, so the ghost could be programmed to appear on the left, while ensuring direct eye contact and triggering a fearful reaction. Shirone, impressed but skeptical, questions whether such a plan is feasible. Iruki remains confident, stating that most people follow similar daily routines at school while making it possible to predict their behavior. However, he acknowledges that an enormous amount of data would be needed, while requiring vast storage capacity and a method to transmit the program to multiple machines at once. Nade, while realizing his electric energy may not be sufficient for the task, suddenly turns to our boy while recalling that he can fire photons. Shirone, initially surprised, quickly remembers something Professor Oliver had mentioned about the ivory tower always being at the forefront of magic. He recalls her explaining that photon technology is predicted to revolutionize communication. Confirming the idea, he acknowledges that photons can indeed be used for transmitting information. Nade, thrilled by the breakthrough, excitedly declares that they are on the verge of creating the perfect ghost. Iruki, however, reminds them that merely scaring a few people will not be enough. Looking at Shirone, he assumes he has something bigger in mind. Our guy, while hesitating for a moment, admits he has an idea and proceeds to show them a set of keywords. Observing their unimpressed expressions, he asks why they dislike it. After thinking for a moment, he suggests mixing in different keywords. Nade, instead of rejecting the idea, praises it as brilliant. Shirone, unsure whether his keywords are actually effective, becomes confused. Nade, still excited, admits he never imagined using the presentation in such a way. Iruki, convinced of the plan's potential, confidently states that if it works, it will shake up the entire school. Shirone, now feeling more confident, finds the idea fascinating. Nade takes charge and decides to start building the device immediately, while assigning Iruki to create the program and instructing our boy to prepare for photon transmission. With renewed energy, they all become excited about saving their club in a completely unexpected way. However, Iruki suddenly pauses and brings up a concern. Nade, while noticing his hesitation, asks what the problem is now. Iruki explains that after roughly calculating the number of photons required for data transfer, he has realized that Shirone would need to produce 3 times his current projection and maintain it for 10 minutes. Turning to our guy, he questions whether he can handle such a challenge. Our boy, shocked upon hearing that he must maintain his photon projection for 10 minutes, struggles to process the challenge ahead. 10 days later, Nade excitedly enters the room after putting up posters and expresses his amazement at the response. Meanwhile, Iruki has spent the entire day writing behavior pattern equations, and Shirone has dedicated his time to practicing photon firing. Curious about Nade's reaction, our guy asks what has happened now. Iruki, while grinning, announces that their event has become the talk of the school, and everyone is eager to see it. Shirone, surprised, questions whether a simple poster could have generated such interest. Iruki, amused, suggests that the attention might be due to how unusually they are handling everything. However, he also notes that the larger the audience, the more work they will have to do. Wanting an estimate, he asks Nade how many people are expected to attend. Nade, uncertain of the exact number, guesses that more than half of the entire school will show up. Worried about their reaction, he calls out their names and warns them not to faint from the pressure. 17 days before the presentation at the Paranormal Science Club, students gather in anticipation. Some express excitement while believing the event will be entertaining. One student, confident in Shirone and Iruki's abilities, predicts that the presentation will be anything but boring and wonders what they will reveal. As the professor passes by, someone stops her to ask if the Paranormal Science Club is really giving a presentation. She responds that the club's fate is still uncertain. According to the latest information, if the presentation fails, the club room will officially be reassigned as planned. A man nearby comments that the club is as good as finished, as its former prestige has long faded. However, he acknowledges that Iruki, as a servant and our boy, known for defeating the dark magicians, cannot be underestimated. He also mentions Nade's significance. Still, since they are only lower-grade students, the real concern lies in what happens afterward. He predicts that once the presentation is over, a battle will begin among the shadow clubs over who will take control of Istus.